February 23, 2024. Eastern Ukraine, Avdiivka region. American M1A1 Abrams tanks appear on the front line for the first time. The moment has been anticipated for over a year. When the United States announced in January 2023 that it would send 31 Abrams to Ukraine, the announcement was treated as a turning point. The Abrams had never been destroyed by an enemy in combat. In the Gulf War, it had annihilated Iraqi T-72s at ranges those crews never believed possible. In Iraq, in 2003, it had driven through the most contested urban environments on Earth and emerged intact. Its composite armor incorporating layers of depleted uranium was the most closely guarded material secret in American armored warfare, the exact composition classified at the same level as nuclear weapons design data. The Abrams was not just a tank, it was an idea. The idea that American engineering had produced something the enemy simply could not kill. 3 days after Ukrainian Abrams reached the front line, the first one was destroyed by a Russian drone. Within 2 months, 5 had been lost. Within 4 months, Ukraine had quietly pulled all of them back from the front. Russia had found the weakness. It was not in the armor, it was in the sky above it. To understand what the Abrams was, you need to understand what America learned in the Yom Kippur War of 1973. Egyptian and Syrian forces had used Soviet Sagar anti-tank missiles in quantities and with effectiveness that stunned Western military planners. The era of the tank as an invulnerable battlefield asset was over. The replacement had to be something different, a vehicle designed from the beginning to survive a modern anti-tank environment, rather than simply to outgun whatever it faced. The M1 that entered service in 1980 was the product of that thinking. Chrysler Defense, later General Dynamics Land Systems, built it around a Lycoming AGT-1500 gas turbine engine rather than a conventional diesel, producing 1,500 horsepower and giving the 68-ton vehicle a top speed of 67 kilometers per hour. The composite chobam-derived armor protected the frontal arc with a classified combination of steel, ceramics, and depleted uranium that no contemporary anti-tank round could reliably defeat from the front. The M256 120mm smoothbore gun fired APF-SDS rounds, armor-piercing fin-stabilized discarding sapot, tungsten or depleted uranium penetrators moving at over 1,600 meters per second that could destroy any tank in the world at combat ranges. In the Gulf War, M1A1 Abrams tanks destroyed over 3,000 Iraqi armored vehicles, including T-72s at ranges beyond 2 kilometers, often before the Iraqi crews even knew they were under fire. American losses to enemy fire, 0. The legend was built in 100 hours. If you're enjoying this story so far, subscribe and stay until the very end because in just a few minutes, you'll discover how a tank once considered virtually invincible was brought down by a weapon costing less than $500. The M1A2 SEPv3 that followed was the same architecture taken to its logical conclusion. The depleted uranium armor package was enhanced. The fire control system integrated a second-generation forward-looking infrared sight and ammunition data link that could program programmable munitions in the barrel, a commander's independent thermal viewer that gave the commander and gunner separate targeting channels simultaneously, the hunter-killer capability that allowed the tank to engage one target while designating the next. The Blue Force tracking system connected every vehicle to a digital command network. The Under Armour auxiliary power unit eliminated the need to run the main turbine engine to power electronics at rest, reducing fuel consumption at static positions. At export price in 2022, a single M1A2 SEPv3 cost $24 million. The unit the United States sent to Ukraine was not the SEPv3, it was refurbished M1A1 variants. Older, without the depleted uranium armor of the full M1A2 package, without some of the most advanced fire control systems, downgraded specifically so that the classified technologies inside the most capable Abrams variants would not risk falling into Russian hands. Ukraine received the Abrams that America was willing to lose. The Abrams that America was not willing to lose stayed home. This decision to send a capable but deliberately limited version reflected a calculation that proved prescient in ways its architects had not fully anticipated. The M1A1 sent to Ukraine was still a formidable vehicle. Its 120mm smoothbore gun could engage Russian T-72 and T-80 variants at ranges those vehicles could not reciprocate. Its thermal imaging allowed crews to fight effectively at night and in conditions where visibility was degraded. Ukrainian crews who trained on it at Fort Irwin in California and at German training facilities described the Abrams as markedly superior to anything they had previously operated, with fire control and optics in a different class from Soviet-era equipment. In engagements where the tank could fight on its own terms, stationary, hull down, at range, it performed as advertised. One Ukrainian commander described killing a Russian T-90M at over 3 kilometers. The gun worked. The sights worked. The protection worked against everything fired at it from the front and sides. The problem was that Ukraine's war had evolved into something the Abrams, like every other tank on Earth, had not been designed for. The front lines in eastern Ukraine in early 2024 were saturated with Russian reconnaissance drones that could identify any armored vehicle within minutes of it moving. FPV, first-person view. Drones carrying shaped charge warheads or RPG rounds could be piloted directly onto a target by an operator watching a live video feed kilometers away. These weapons cost less than $500 each. They could strike from above, from the rear, from any angle the tank's thick frontal armor did not cover. The Abrams, like the Challenger 2 and the Leopard 2, had been designed for the threat of the 1970s and 1980s, another tank firing at it from the front. It had not been designed for a $500 commercial drone modified in a garage and flown into its engine deck by a 19-year-old watching a phone screen. The first confirmed Abrams destroyed in Ukraine was hit by a Lancet loitering munition and an RPG in combination. Subsequent losses followed similar patterns. Top attack from drones, rear aspect drone strikes on engine compartments, combinations of drone strikes and artillery on immobilized vehicles. All but one of the tanks lost in Ukraine resulted from drone or other strikes from above and to the rear. The sole exception was hit by the main armament from a Russian T-72B3 tank. 2 U.S. military officials confirmed the withdrawal to the Associated Press, stating that Russian drone operations mean that the Abrams cannot operate effectively without detection or coming under attack. The proliferation of drones on the battlefield means there isn't open ground that you can just drive across without fear of detection, a senior defense official told reporters. Ukrainian crews had been welding improvised anti-drone cages to the tops of their Abrams, the same cope cage approach that Russian crews had been using, improvised field modifications that looked ungainly and were not designed by General Dynamics but were saving lives because the official solution did not yet exist. Site Index 26:1. One Ukrainian Abrams commander described surviving multiple FPV drone strikes specifically because his vehicle had additional ERA and cope netting on top of the turret, stating that without those field modifications they would have been killed without any chance. Turn on notifications so you never miss another military history story, and let me know in the comments. Do you think the Abrams failed in Ukraine, or did modern drone warfare change the battlefield faster than any tank could adapt? The American response was the Army's procurement report for 2026, which included more than $107 million for survivability improvements to almost 400 M1 Abrams, stealth-enhancing paint, belly protection against IEDs and mines, laser attack warning receivers, and top attack protection systems. These were modifications being funded and designed in direct response to what Russia had done to American tanks in Ukraine. The most powerful army on Earth was spending $100 million to fix a problem that a Russian drone operator with a $500 aircraft had identified and exploited in under a month. The SEPv3 program that was supposed to represent the peak of Abrams' evolution was being overtaken by a battlefield reality that no upgrade package had anticipated because no upgrade package had been designed for a world saturated with cheap autonomous weapons. The deeper problem was the gas turbine engine. The AGT-1500 that had given the Abrams its extraordinary power-to-weight ratio and 67 km/h top speed consumed fuel at rates that made logistics a constant operational constraint. In the Gulf War, American supply chains had been prepared for months before the 100-hour ground campaign. In Ukraine, where the front was fluid and supply routes were under constant interdiction, a vehicle that drank fuel the way the Abrams did was a vehicle that spent dangerous hours stationary while it waited for resupply. Stationary vehicles in a drone-saturated environment are targets. The turbine also required specialized maintenance that Ukrainian mechanics trained on Soviet-era equipment could not easily provide. Spare parts had to come from American supply chains. Unlike the Ford F-550 chassis of a Rochelle Senator, which any mechanic who had worked on American trucks could repair, the Abrams required expertise that existed in American military workshops and almost nowhere else. Site Index 21. An unnamed U.S. official told the Australian Broadcasting Corporation that the tank roof was the weakest point of the Abrams, and this was a drone war. The Abrams X, the next-generation concept that General Dynamics unveiled in 2022, incorporated a trophy active protection system, reduced crew from 4 to 3 through an autoloader, and was designed explicitly to address the survivability gaps that Ukraine had revealed. The M1A2 follow-on concept was being designed to weigh approximately 60 tons rather than the SEPv3 78, achieving an 18-ton reduction through lightweight tracks, hydropneumatic suspension, and a fundamental rethinking of the vehicle's architecture. The lessons of Ukraine were being incorporated into designs for tanks that would not exist until the 2030s or 2040s. In the meantime, the army that had built the most lethal tank in the history of armored warfare was asking $100 million to bolt anti-drone cages onto the ones it already had. The Abrams is not a failed tank. In the environment it was designed for, it remains the most capable armored vehicle ever mass-produced. Its frontal protection is extraordinary. Its gun is lethal at ranges that defeat Russian targeting systems. Its thermal optics give it a decisive advantage in the night battles that have defined eastern Ukraine's winter fighting. Ukrainian crews who fought in it consistently praised its performance in the engagements where it could operate as designed. But the Ukraine war revealed something about armored warfare that every tank program on Earth will be reckoning with for decades. The threat had moved from the front to the top, from the horizontal to the vertical, from the expensive guided missile to the disposable drone, and no tank designed before 2022 had been built for that world. The Abrams did not fail in Ukraine. The battlefield moved, and the Abrams, like every tank ever built, had been designed for a battlefield that no longer existed. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, turn on notifications, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps us bring you more in-depth stories about military history, technology, and the battles that continue to reshape modern warfare.